Nai nai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai, yana nai, yana yana nai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai, yana. Ya nai, ya na 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 na, ya na na, ya na na, ya na 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 na, ya na, ya na 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 na, ya na na, ya na na. Shama Tehaleluya, Hallelujah. Kol HaNeshama Tehaleluya, Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, ya na 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 na, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol HaNeshama Tehaleluya, hallelujah. Kol HaNeshama Tehaleluya, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Ya na na na, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, ya na na na, hallelujah, hallelujah. Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov. Just by way of introduction to the service, I want to briefly reprise what I said to the trustees at the trustees meeting last night. And that was talking about one of the great mitzvot of the month of Adar, which is to be happy. To which people usually say, sure, how do I do that? I'm imagining that the level of eye rolling at such a mitzvah in the 11th month of our pandemic is also somewhat profound. It's a huge rolling of eyes, not just a slight one, but the you've got to be kidding me one. So I did a little research to see really what the mitzvah is, where that came from, and it's from Daf 29a from Masechet Ta'anit, so tractate of fast holidays in the Babylonian Talmud. And it's in a long discussion of what happened at the destruction of the temple in the time of Nebuchadnezzar, the destruction of the first temple, and what happened in the month of Tammuz and Av, and that's why we have the fasts of 17th of Tammuz and the fast of the 9th of Av. And after all of this discussion on we have to prepare ourselves for that fast, and so we start at the beginning of the month of Av, we start reducing our joy, our rejoicing, actually, our actions that lead to joy. We engage in less of them. The end of the page is, and likewise at the beginning of Adar we begin increasing them. And that's where that comes from. So it's not a commandment to be happy, because what we know from mental illness, what we know from, well, most of our realities is you can't command someone to be happy. You can't make it a sacred obligation to be happy. There's something really silly about that. That's not at all. Talmud is many things. It's seldom silly. It's sometimes a little bit wild and crazy and sometimes incredibly offensive. No wonder I love Talmud so much. But what it actually says is we begin engaging in practical acts, which are acts of rejoicing. And so the acronym that I gave everyone last night is the good Yiddish word Seidel. For those of you who are Seinfeld fans, you can go ahead and just enjoy the visualization right now. And so that would be singing, dancing, and laughing. And the reality is, joy is a little bit like Shabbat. We just don't get it. We actually have to do something. And the times that we most need to do it are the times that we least feel like doing it. And so here's the practical thing. Over the course of the next couple weeks leading up to Purim, we are commanded to begin adding acts of rejoicing. Not to be happy, but to add acts of rejoicing. Here we are on Kabbalat Shabbat, which is one of the most joyful of our services. There are certainly opportunities to sing. You know what? Maybe home alone or with a small group of people. Better be a small group of people, folks. Maybe dancing is in order. And you know what? Just let that laughter overtake you if it comes. We have a responsibility to actually consciously do things, not to passively wait for them to happen to us. And if you know what, we're not feeling a whole lot of joy right now, then let's find a way to make some through our acts of rejoicing. So let's sidle up to each other. Let's sing, let's dance, let's laugh. Let's also bring a little light to the world. Please rise and let's say the bracha for our Shabbos candles. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher krishan b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. We are on, not that page, we are a little earlier than that. We're on page 111. L'chunaranana, we begin our journey to prepare ourselves for Shabbat deliberately, adding acts of Shabbat preparation, which including singing, dancing, and laughing, certainly being engaged in what we are doing together. Lechu neranana neranana ladon naria naria letzu yishenu. Lechu neranana neranana ladon naria naria letzu yishenu. Nekad mafanav nekad mafanav nekad mafanav betoda bizmirot bizmirot naria lo bizmirot bizmirot naria lo lechu neranana neranana ladon naria naria letzu yishenu. Lechu neranana neranana ladon naria naria letzu yishenu. Page 112. Sing to the Eternal a new song, and even if it's an old melody, sing it with new life, new determination to rejoice. Shiru Ladonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Baruch Shemo, Basru Miyom Leyom Yeshuat, Sapnu Regoyim Kevodo, Bechol Amim Niflotav, Ki Gadol Adonai, Umulal Meod, Norahu, Al Kol Elohim, Yanai Ki Kol Elohim, Amim Elohim, Adonai Shmayim Asa, Hod Be'ada Lefanav, Oz V'Tiferet Be'Mikdasho, Avon Ladonai Mishpechot Ha'amim, Avon Ladonai Kavod Va'oz, Avon Ladonai Kevod Shemo, Seu Mincha, Volech Hatzrotav, Yanai Naishtagvul Adonai, Behadra Kodesh Ilu Mipanav, Kol Haaretz Imru V'Goyim, Adonai Malach Atikon Tevel Ba'altim, Yadin Na'amim B'Mesharim, Yismechu Shemaim B'Tagel Haaretz, Yiramayam, Umlo Meod, Yalo Sadai, Bechol Asher Bo Yanai, Az Yeranenu, Kol Ratzayah, Ibnei Adonai Kiva, Lishpot Haaretz, Lishpot Tevet B'Tzedek, Ve'ami, Be'emunato, Yanai, Yai, Adonai Malach Tagel Haaretz Yismechuim Rabim Anan V'Rafel Tzedek Mishpat Mechon Kiso. Last four lines on 115. Or Zarua La Tzadik O Yisrael Simcha Or Zarua La Tzadik O Yisrael Simcha Simchu Tzadikim Badonai Vehodu Lezecher Kocho Or Zarua La Tzadik O Yisrael Simcha Or Zarua La Tzadik O Yisrael Simcha. (116) Mismo shiru l'Adonai Shir chadash Ki niflaot asa Hoshia lo yemino Uzroa kodsho Hodia Adonai Yeshuato Le'ene hagoyim Gilat tzidkato Zachar chasdo Ve'emunato Levet Yisrael Levet Yisrael Page 117. Adonai Malach Yegazu Hamim Yoshev Kruvim Tanut Haaretz Adonai Tzion Gadol V'Ramhu Al Kol Ha'amim Yerushamecha Gadol V'Nora Kadosh Hu Romemu 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 Adonai Eloheinu Romemu Aremu Adonai Romemu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Romemu Romemu Adonai Veishtachavu lehar kodsho Veishtachavu lehar kodsho Veishtachavu lehar kodsho Vekodsho Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Ki kadosh Adonai Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Ki kadosh Adonai Veishtachavu lehar kodsho Veishtachavu lehar kodsho Veishtachavu lehar kodsho Vekodsho Veishtachavu lehar kodsho Veishtachavu lehar kodsho Veishtachavu lehar kodsho Vekodsho Ya na 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 ya na na ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na na ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na na ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na na Mizmor leDavid Havu l'Adonai b'nei Eli Havu l'Adonai Kavod v'oz Yahinai Havu l'Adonai Kavod shemo Ishtagnu l'Adonai b'hadrat kodesh Kol Adonai al hamayim El hakavod nirim Adonai al mayim rabim Kol Adonai bakol
Sinai, Kol Adonai be'adai, Kol Adonai shomer arazim, Vayishper Adonai et azei avanon, Vayarkidem kemo egel Levanon ve'Sirion, kemo ve'en re'emin Yahinai, Kol Adonai chotzem la'avodesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yechol el ayelot, Vayechesor yeyarot, Vayechalom kulo omer kavod, Yahinai Adonai lama bo yashav yeshev, Adonai melech leolam, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Hey, nay, 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 nay. Hey, nay, 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 nay. Hey, nay, 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 nay. Nay, 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 nay. Nay, 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 nay. Hey, nay, 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 nay. Yeah, nay. Nay, 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 nay. Lecha dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamo v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmianu el hamayuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo, Echad l'shemo tiferet v'litila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechuvn elecha, Ki mekor habaracha, Mehirosh מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי צאי מתוך האפך, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמוד עלייך גדלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. נערי מעפר קומי, לשבגדי כיפתך מי, על יד בן אישה את בית הלחמי, קרבה על נפשי גאלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, כי באורי קומי אורי, אורי שיר, דברי כבוד ארמלייך ניגע. לך שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לא תבושי ולא תקהמי, מה תשתוכחי ומה תהמי, מה יכעסו אני אהמי, ונבטל לי הקהילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. והיו למשיסה שוסייך, ריח הקוקו מבלייך, יסיס עלייך אלוהייך, כמסוץ חתן על קהלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. ימין ושמאל תפרוצי, ואת אדוני תריצי, על ידיש בן וחצי, ונשמחה ונגילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי קהלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון ישגה, שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני, צורי צורי ולא הבלת בו. אדוני מלך גאות לבש, לבש אדוני עוז התעזר. אף תיכון תבל בל תימות, נכון כיסך מאז בעולם אתה. נשאו נהרות אדוני, נשאו נהרות קולם, יישאו נהרות דוחים. מקולות מים רבים, אדירים משברי ים. מקולות מים רבים אדירים משבריה אדיר במרום אדוני אדיר במרום אדוני בקולו מים רבים אדירים משבריה בקולו מים רבים אדירים משבריה אדיר במרום אדוני אדיר במרום אדוני אדיר במרום אדוני בקולות מים רבים אדירים משבריה בקולות מים רבים אדירים משבריה אדיר במרום אדוני אדיר במרום אדוני אדיר במרום אדוני אדיר במרום אדוני
An exercise in Kavanah on page 127, in place of our Borchu. We're about to bow down. Someone calls out and says, "Bless the living God, whom we are called to bless," and they bow. And everyone responds with, "Bless the living God, whom we are called to bless forever and ever." The act of Kavanah is when we choose to actually bow down, to make ourselves slightly humble. To whom or to what are we willing to bow down to? In other words, what is it that we are willing to set our ego slightly back in order to be able to learn from, step into? We take a second to ask that question and then indeed bow down. Page 128.
Baruch atah Adonai Melo Eloheinu melech haolam Asher bidvarov ma'ariv aravim V'chochma potech sharim Uvidvuna mishane itim Umachalif et hazmanim Umsader et hakochavim B'mishmerotehem barkia kirtzono More yom v'layla koler or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or Hamavir yom u'mevi layla Umavdil ben yom u'vein layla Adonai tzvot shemo Baruch ata Adonai Ha'ma'ariv ha'aravim. אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים אותן לימדת. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים אותן לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשופנו ובקומנו נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח ונעלוז בדברי תורתך, ומצוותיך וחוקותיך, לעולם ועד, לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ויורחמנו, והם כיומם ולילה. כי הם חיינו ויורחמנו, והם כיומם ולילה. כי הם חיינו ויורחמנו, הם כיומם ולילה. כי הם חיינו ויורחמנו, ובהם כיומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו, לעולמים, לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב את עמו ישראל. Yai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai nai, yai nai nai. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Yai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai. שם כבודו לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודברת בהם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. ימי השמיים על הארץ. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם,
אמת ואמונה כל זאת וקיים עלינו, כי הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ואין זולתו, ואנחנו ישראל עמו. העושה גדולות עד אין מחוקר, הרכב נפלאות עד אין מספר. וראו בעיניו גבורתו שבחובי הודו, לשמו מלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם. משה ומרים ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילות אוסף אלי, נורא תהילות אוסף אלי, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה. זה אלי ענו ואמרו, זה אלי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילות אוסף אלי, נורא תהילות אוסף אלי, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום. והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, לשלום. והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, לשלום. והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים, לחיים. Source of our life and our sovereign, cause us to lie down in peace and rise again to enjoy life. And spread over us the covering of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel and save us for the sake of your name. Be a shield about us, turning away every enemy, disease, violence, hunger, and sorrow. Remove the temptation that awaits us and the guilt that lies behind us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings, for you are a God who guards and protects us, a ruler of mercy and compassion. Guard us when we go out and when we come in to enjoy life and peace both now and forever. And spread over us the shelter of your peace. Blessed are you, eternal, spreading the shelter of peace over us, over your people Israel, and over all the world. Baruch atah Adonai, הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל עמו ישראל ועל כל העולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. יענני ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ויום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. Please rise for our silent Amidah, starting on page 140. Adonai Sefetai Tiftach, Upi Agid Tehilatecha. Eloheinu v'Avotenu ya'aleh v'yavo v'yagia v'yira'eh. Of course, if you're still davening, just put this on pause and take as much time as you possibly want. יהיו לרצון אמרי פי וגיון ליבי לפניך אדוני צורי אדוני
צורי וגואלי וגואלי יהיו לרצון אמרפי והגיון ליבי לפניך אדוני צורי אדוני צורי וגואלי וגואלי
One of the great mystical things for non-musicians when they see sometimes what certain musicians do is the fake sheet, the great mystical fake sheet. Now, if that's the first time you've heard this word, it sounds a little bit strange. There's probably no way you'll see this on camera, but this is a fake sheet for one of the pieces I did in the concert that I did for the Council of Christian and Jews. I guess 2 weeks ago. And the way that it works is this. This is a ballad with words, so the words are written on it. That's kind of helpful. And then we've got a melody, and then we've got chords. And so if I were to play the melody straight, so this is Spring Can Really Hang You Up the Most, one of my favorite jazz ballads, it would sound like this. And that's counting exactly, playing the rests exactly as they're written. Underneath that, or above that in this case, there are chords. Now, chords, hopefully we know what a chord is, triads, oftentimes. So we've got our major chords, we've got our minor chords, we've got our diminished chords. Let's see, I gotta play it. Yeah, there we go, diminished chord. And then we've got our augmented chords. Watch out, because when your rabbi is a composer, sometimes instead of diminished and augmented, they play augmented and demented chords, and that just never goes very well at all. So, and of course, we've got other things that we can do with them. And in jazz, oftentimes, we extend the chords. So where we have a chord that sounds like this, we're very familiar in just pop music of adding what we call a minor seventh to it. You hear that and you say, oh my goodness, I have to go somewhere. I can't stop on that chord, I have to go here, right? Of course, in jazz, sometimes we'll do what's called a major seventh. Sounds, right? Sounds a little bit either ballady or jazzy or something like that. And we can extend that out, so that's a seventh, ninth. There we go. And sometimes we can flat that, so here we go with a minor seventh, flat nine. Oh, and that just makes you have to go to here. Well, what's written in the fake sheet is just the chords and the melody. So the chords in this go like this. Kind of hear the jazziness of that one, and you put it together. Exactly what's written on the page sounds like this. Get one jazzy chord in there, but it doesn't really sound much like jazz, isn't it? Let me put it this way. If you went and couldn't wait for the pubs to start opening up, and you went to your favorite jazz club and you went in there and that's what you heard all night long, you might not be happy that that's what you spent your first free post-lockdown day doing. So what the fake sheet is, it's kind of the set in stone part, the melody and the chords, and then the idea of the jazz musician. And I do not claim to be a jazz pianist, but I figured pulling out the saxophone tonight wouldn't be the best idea. Well, the first thing that's going to happen is I'm not even going to play what's written, because I'm going to give an introductory chord. It's not even on the page. I'm going to start with something that's not even written there. You get the idea. Changed. It made it into, well, I can't say what it's supposed to be because everyone has their different interpretation, but that's kind of what's cool about it, is that someone who can really play jazz on the piano is going to come in and take that, which is relatively elementary in the jazz piano world, and well, just go online, and Google Spring can really hang you up the most, and listen to what some of the greats out there have done, because it's a remarkable and beautiful thing. But what's combined there is something that we hear all the time in Judaism, keva and kavanah. Keva means permanent, and kavanah we translate today as intentionality. That's not what the original meaning was. Back before we had the blessing of having printed prayer books, the job of the Shliach Tzibur was not just to lead the prayers, but was to know the keva and to be able to do kavanah. The keva was not what's written in the prayer book. The keva was the order of the prayers. The keva was the idea of each prayer. And the written in stone, the permanent part, was the Baruch Atah at the end of each of the prayers or blessings. The chatima, the seal on the end of a blessing. And then what was originally done was the Shliach Tzibur, the Chazan, the prayer leader, the ambassador of the community to fulfill the obligation of prayer. They improvised like that. We have the Ma'ariv Aravim, a prayer of the cycle of day moving into night and night moving into day. The part that's set in stone is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam ha'Ma'ariv Aravim, who brings forth or who causes the lights to pass and the evening to move along. So I could sit there and say, blessed are you, eternal and our God, sovereign of the universe, who helps us to understand the metaphor of light and darkness. That when times are really dark, that the cycle of inevitability that you have set in motion as you are the base of the universe and you are the function of all the cosmos, well, certainly the darkness will once again become light, just as the light that we experience will once again become darkness, Baruch Atah, etc. And eventually what would happen, of course, is some people were better than others. So over the course of time, some people would say, well, I heard Chazan so-and-so over in Tiberias. He prayed that prayer, and it was so good. Here's what they did. Let's hear it. And soon that would catch on because Chazan so-and-so, heck of a Chazan. Next thing you know, we've got favorites out there, and it starts narrowing down. And about 1,100 years ago, we get our first fully written down prayer book, the Seder Rav Amram. And everything changed because instead of improvising our prayers, everything was keva. It was all written down. That was it. It was set in stone. Our prayer book was permanent. Well, how do we add ourselves to it at that point? And, well, the Jews, being who we are, we still decided to add something of ourselves, and that's when we changed the idea of kavanah, improvisation, to kavanah, well, what we add, which is still improvisation, but now it's on the flavor of intentionality. Keva and kavanah are the yin and yang of Judaism. This counts for everything that we do, from waking up in the morning. Judaism says you should do that with a specific kavanah. In our tradition, it's of gratitude. What would our lives be like if every morning we woke up, we actually would say several things we're thankful for? Yeah, well, the keva's there. It says, Modeh ani or moda ani lefenechem el chayam shechazati bi nishmati v'chemla rabamonetecha. Thank you that I'm alive and not dead. Thank you, Modeh ani, is the first thing that I say. That's become the keva. The kavanah is taking that thing that's set in stone, that eternal thing that's been passed to me, and doing something with it. Otherwise, it's just with nothing interesting whatsoever, because that chord sounds so much better. Well, that is the Modeh Ani Lefenecha. You know what? I'm using this moment to say, I am so dang thankful for this and that. And we all have a lot to be thankful for. But we do a really poor job with bringing that kavanah into our lives, don't we? Everything in the prayer book is supposed to have its kavanah. Every word, we are supposed to give ourselves the opportunity to add something of ourselves to it. And this is the very long beginning to what will be a very short exploration of some symbols, because we have in our Torah portion for this week, for Shabbat Shekalim, tomorrow, I'm talking about the symbol of money. But we've got Moses building his first altar and sacrificing the first animal and sprinkling the blood on the altar. One of those images that, well, if you're a meat eater, it's still not a very fun image. For our vegans that we've got in the congregation, this is where we oftentimes it's not just an eye roll, it's a slam the Torah shut and you've got to be kidding me here. But once again, these are symbols. We are still primitive spiritually and we need external symbols to remind us of internal realities. So what's going on there? Well, it's keva and kavanah. How is that? Last week we spoke of the symbol of stone, the law of Moses, written on stone. Why stone? Because as we looked out on the desert, we saw two things, sand and stone. The sand, our very symbol of impermanence, that which is there now will certainly be gone tomorrow. Stone, the most eternal thing that we could possibly imagine. Using stone as an item of religious permanence seems to be endemic, evolutionary to Homo sapiens. We go back to our cave drawings in southern France, which we can't visit anymore, but boy, are the pictures amazing when you see them. Not primitive at all, but deeply insightful understanding of the animals that were part of our existence, as well as strange abstractions that showed just how creative we were already 40,000 years ago. Our symbol of permanence, stone. Well, go visit Stonehenge if you haven't already done so. Or go to the Walk in the Moors where they have the stone circle called the 12 Apostles. 12, interesting, huh? Of course, we see this also in Judaism, that we have those circles of stones from the past showing up when Saul is anointed, is made Mashiach. That's what anointed means. When Saul is anointed the first king of the Jewish people, of the Hebrew people, the prophet Samuel goes to Gilgal in order to do this process, in order to bring about the non-king to a king. What is Gilgal? It's not a place, it's a circle of stones. To go to the place that represents the most permanent thing they could possibly imagine. So, of course, we build an altar to pull our great idea of permanence into the present. To create the keva, to create the permanent, to create something that we can dig our teeth into, that we can set our comfort to. Stone will not shift. And certainly when you look at how stone was used in our history, if you haven't walked through Hezekiah's tunnel, that's been there for nearly 3,000 years, and it's still as solid as can be. Blood, on the other hand, fascinating, problematic part of our tradition. One of the few traditions where we are absolutely 7 times in the Torah, it's unambiguous, told you cannot drink or eat blood. Part of what makes our kashrut so complicated is after the blood is drained from the animal, then we have to brine the meat in order to get as much blood out as possible. It is an incredibly complicated sort of thing. And why is that such a taboo for us? Because in this country, I know some people really love blood pudding, and blood soup is eaten all over the world, and this is a very common sort of thing. So why is it that blood is the symbol of not only what gets sprinkled on this altar, the symbol of permanence, but also is the symbol of something that we cannot ingest? Well, quite briefly, to read from one of my favorite websites. It's about 20 universities in the States that have something called the Symbol Project. Blood globally represents life itself as the element of divine life that functions within the human body. It is repeatedly referred to as having magic powers and as the only food for supernatural beings, and is also associated with a variety of non-rational notions, including a blood brotherhood, blood vengeance. Since it corresponds so readily with the color red, it may represent the end of a series which begins with sunlight yellow and follows immediately with vegetable life green, closely tied with passion, but also death, war, sacrifice, including animal sacrifice, and the warding off of malicious powers. Close ties to guilt, especially as bloodstains, and oftentimes interreplaceable with wine. We were pretty observant people back in the day. I think scientific process was beginning when you look at the observations that were made in the Torah regarding health, and certainly the process in the Talmud. Yes, we were pre-modern, and yes, we were deeply superstitious. I'd say that we weren't necessarily more superstitious then than we are today. Check your superstitions at the door, folks. But roughly 20 to 40% of humanity in the time of the Torah in the Bronze Age were killed via violent means. It was a time where we saw viscerally what blood meant. And as horrible as this image is, it's the reality of the people that wrote Torah that hopefully very few of us have ever seen the life drain out of someone as they've bled. And certainly what is frightening for us was a nearly everyday occurrence for our ancestors, so equating blood with life is a very logical thing. And saying that we are not going to consume of that which represents something higher is a profound beginning to the underlying ethic of Judaism. So, how do we put this together? What does this have to do with anything? Well, the purpose of an altar was to draw nearer to God. The word for sacrifice is korban, and the word to draw nearer to God in Hebrew is lihit karev, to draw oneself near, the Elohim. So the purpose of sacrifice was to create the possibility of relationship. And look at the combination. You build something that represents permanence, and you add to that which represents life. Finish off with a quote and an idea. As I have begun for the last 3 months here, turning my sermons into explorations of symbols in the Torah, I have gotten back into my Carl Gustav Jung and found this quote today. Anyone who wants to know the human psyche will learn next to nothing from experimental psychology. Any psychologists out there can have fun with that. They would be better advised to abandon exact science, put away their scholar's gown, bid farewell to their study, and wander with human heart throughout the world. There in the horrors of prisons, lunatic asylums and hospitals, and drab suburban pubs, in brothels and gambling hells, in the salons of the elegant, the stock exchanges, socialist meetings, churches, revivalist gatherings, and ecstatic sects, through love and hate, through the experience of passion in every form in his or her own body, they would reap richer stores of knowledge than textbooks a foot thick could give them, and they would know how to doctor the sick with a real knowledge of the human soul. It's from New Paths in Psychology from 1916. There's a reason that we had an altar and we had blood, that we had keva and kavanah, that we're supposed to have our ritual as it's set in our tradition and the kavanah that we bring to it. And the idea is the relationship can only happen with the both of them. One out of balance with the other. Well, the altar out of balance with kavanah is a museum. It's honoring the dead and nothing more. There are certain synagogues in Germany where, when changes are needed for the present, where members of the board say, my grandmother or grandfather who died in the Holocaust experienced this liturgy. We cannot dishonor them by changing it. Fair enough. But it's a museum. On the other hand, if it's all experimentation, then it becomes the sand that blows away in the breeze. The blood's meaningless, that it flows out and disappears quickly. In the 60s and 70s in the Chavurah movement in the United States, many around the world, but typified in the United States, many, especially progressive Jews, thought we don't need this edifice around us. What we need to do is just have our kavanah. So let's meet in houses and let's start just experiencing our Judaism. It sounds a little bit like some of the brilliant things that are happening around the world, and I mean that non-sarcastically during Zoom. The creativity by which we are exploring our tradition. And you know what happened to all those Chavurot? After 20 years, they built synagogues and are the backbone of the Reform movement in America today. Why? Because one needs to be balanced by the other. We still need institutions, whether we like it or not. I'm tired of hearing people say that all a synagogue membership is pay to pray. It's not. We have lights that need to be on. We have people that need to be buried. We have people that need to be comforted. We have full groups of activities that are happening behind anyone seeing them. That is the sum total of every congregation. Orthodox, conservative, Reform, liberal. It's how we do it. We don't pay to pray. We give our money to institutions to allow people to find themselves within it, to meet with something that is greater with them on the altar of existence that is typified by that which we bring from the past and meet with our lifeblood of the present. And the second that we leave either of those aside, that if it's only the edifice or it's only our creativity, we lose the meeting with something greater than us. Because this one's all about our ego, and this one is all about looking to the past, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. We make our religion real only with both aspects, which means we've got responsibility. We have to build the altar. And that not only means the resources to do it, but also saying we're going to learn something about our tradition. Or to even admit that we have something to learn. And on the other hand, we have to say, even I am required to put some of my lifeblood into this endeavor, not waiting for my neighbor to do it. And if I'm not perfectly happy with everything that's going on, well, guess what? No one is. First of all, it's the nature of institutions. Second of all, it's certainly the nature of religion. By giving our lifeblood, our life energy, to an institution, we are saying that it matters enough for us to help it be alive. So, next time we get tempted to shut the Torah, the Chumash, when we're reading of Moses sprinkling blood on the horns of the altar, it is a symbol. It probably happened in that way. But I would like to believe only in the larger current to bring us to the point where we understand we are absolutely required to immerse ourselves deep in Jewish tradition. Our ritual means something, and our buildings absolutely mean something. But only with us putting something into it as well. That's a responsibility that's not for the board, it's not for the rabbi, it's not for the cantor, it's not for the educators. It's everyone's responsibility on both sides of it. So, living symbols. We breathe into them. They come into our lives. And as we slowly move away from lockdown, Be'ezrat Hashem, let us be prepared to meet that something greater than ourselves in our places that maybe once didn't have life. Shabbat Shalom. We are on page 310. Please rise for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, לתת גדולה לצא בראשית, אשר בחר מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. We take a moment now to step into our places of remembrance. And again, it's the same reality. We take names and memories and photographs from the past. And when we have a yortzeit, we breathe our life into those memories. For a day, we bring those that we've loved and lost back present in our lives to make those lessons real. The metaphor of the altar and the blood moves into everything that we do once we understand the beauty of those symbols. And so we take our life and we put it into these names of those we remember. We think today of Philip Lewis, the uncle of Simon Lewis, and of Hilton Lewis. We think of Phyllis Cohen, the mother of Howard Cohen. Think of Joyce Harrison, the mother-in-law of Linda Harrison, and Sylvia Weinberg, the mother of Doreen Berger. We think of Shirley Berwin, the mother of Simon Berwin, and of Stephen Cohen, the father of Tom Cohen. We think of Montague Tiemann, uncle of Jenny Moran, mourned by the entire Sinai family, as well as Faye Jackman and Margaret Hiller. Zichronam Livracha, may all of their memories forever be a blessing. And of course, there are always names that we leave out. I invite you, even or especially if you're by yourself, to call out those names now. Zichronam Livracha, may all of their memories forever be a blessing. I invite you to please rise if you are in a state of mourning, and everyone else follows in solidarity as we step together into this place of Kaddish, supporting those who are saying Kaddish at home. Page 316. Yit Gadal. Say shalom b'romav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru, amen. May the source of strength grant strength to all those who are in mourning, and may we all say, amen. Few announcements. Next Adult Education, Gateways, is on the 28th, but on the 21st, we have our second virtual tour live from Eretz Israel. This one is Sea to Sea. The text, virtual trekking across northern Israel, dreaming of getting away and exploring somewhere new. Professional tour guide Josh Hartuv will be joining us again, live from Israel, leading us sea to sea on another of his virtual guided tours. So places are limited. Book online. Get onto our webpage. Book that. I heard the first one was brilliant. So make the second one just as brilliant. And don't forget, add a few extra chai to what you put in there, because again, it's not pay to pray, and our shekalim are not only important and helpful, they are an obligation. Let's see here. Make sure, if you have not done it yet, and that includes me, that you get on the website and you make a special birthday wish to our member Bram Myers, who will be 100 on the 22nd of February. That is something that is pretty cool, what's been set up. Thank you to those who have set it up, but let's get on there and just blow his mind with the amount of people that are thinking of him. And finally, don't forget to continue buying your Sidurim. If you are flipping through the flip book online, it's time to get your own Siddur at home. Go onto our website and find that. And with that, it is time to say goodbye, to say Shabbat Shalom, to say Chodesh Tov. And of course, as we leave our places of prayer, oftentimes we do that by fulfilling the obligation to be more complete than when we began, to say the word Shalom, which means peace and completion. And that is exactly what we're going to do. Say shalom b'roma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Say shalom b'roma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Say shalom b'roma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Say shalom b'roma,
hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom b'mroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom b'mroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Shabbat shalom. Forgot one announcement. Next week is Leilad weekend, so I will not be here next weekend. That does not mean you shouldn't show up. It means even more so that you should actually show up and support all of our lay leaders. We are, if you are still here, are doing Kiddush with me. Get yourself some fruit of the vine. Page 452. Va'ev va'evoker yom hashishi v'chol hashemayim v'haaretz v'chol tzava'am. ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו, כי יבוא שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. סברי חבריי, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קדשנו במצוותיו ורצבנו, ושבת קודשו בערב רצון הנחלנו, זיכרון למעשה וראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי באנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת לחיים. חיים. And for that wonderful handful of you that are left, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shechol niyeh b'dvaro l'chaim l'chaim. Shabbat shalom, everyone. See you tomorrow morning.